A man who spent the morning in a booth. Not a voting booth, a diner booth, getting some hash browns. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. All right, we'll be fast because Tucker is time is tight with Tucker. Good to see you, my friend.
Congratulations.
I'm
impressed.
15 years of podcasting.
Well, how do you do that? Yeah, so I was going to call to congratulate you and all that, but it's actually more of a question. How do you keep it going for 15 years? How do you keep the love alive? How does it not grow stale? How do you wake up every morning psyched to do what you do? I've done this, my current job, for 2 months, so I'm going to pay close attention.
I think you have to have a good, natural sort of curiosity in general. And I think curiosity is wildly underrated. You know, every person that I've interviewed, and I've interviewed everyone who's successful, has this lust for curiosity. They want to know, why and how. So first is like just a general curiosity, because if you don't have curiosity, then you're sort of a dog that won't hunt. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
I do know exactly.
So for me, what I do is I'm walking through the hills of Malibu yesterday, and I'm looking at it's a dead end street, a cul-de-sac. I've always said, people are like dead end street and cul-de-sac. Like, what's the difference? I was like, cul-de-sac, you're in a good area. Dead end, you're in a shit area. But it's the same thing, which is rich people call it a cul-de-sac. So it's a long, long uphill walk, and it's cul-de-sac. And you just keep going, and there's no traffic. But I did see the mail truck. And there's a guy driving a sort of mini mail truck, not from our youth, but a more modern version made by Dodge or Chevy or something. And I notice it's a right-hand drive mail truck, because they need to be right-hand drive because that's how they deliver the mail. It's on the right side of the street. That's where the mailbox is. If it was a left-hand drive, they'd have to get out of the car and walk around it to put the mail in. So all the meter maids and all the mail trucks are right-hand drive. So I was taking note of it, and then I thought, do we manufacture a right-hand drive mail truck, or are those European mail trucks that we get from England? Like, does Dodge make right-hand drive minivans in England and then we import them here versus convert a left-hand drive into a right-hand drive? So that's what's going through my mind. And then I go, well, in England, they're right-hand drive, so I guess their mail trucks are all good. And then I go, oh, no, wait a minute. They drive on the other side of the street.
Exactly.
So they're screwed in the mail truck department, too. And then I think, do we have an exchange program where we give people in England our left-hand drive mail trucks and they give us right-hand drive mail trucks? And then I think, oh, I've got to talk about this with somebody. And that's how I'm able to do this every day.
Did you find the mail truck trade negotiator, or who do you talk to? Like, how do you book a show like that?
I have not gotten into the nuts and the bolts of the mail truck right-hand, left-hand drive. I'm going to pursue it, and I want to know if there's an exchange program. And also, it doesn't make sense, because we should be driving on the left side of the road and have access to our mailboxes and whatever it is, and they should be on the other side. We're kind of screwing ourselves, and they're screwing themselves. I can't get the mail from my car without getting out of the car because I'm left-hand drive.
But, I mean, isn't it harder to live that way than to just accept that everything's fine and that whatever they're giving you is safe and effective? It's for your own good. Diversity is our strength. And by the way, the real question is Meghan Markle ever going to be queen? I mean, wouldn't it be easier to live like that?
It's burdensome, I would say.
I would think.
It's a burden, but would you have it any other way? Because it can't be both. You know what I mean? You can't do a podcast for 15 years or be a successful comedian or write books or do what you do without being burdened by this questioning and this curiosity.
But, I mean, have you ever had a day where you wake up and you think, I've done this for whatever it was, 9.5 years, 10 years, 13 years. I kind of figured it all out. I'm not curious anymore. I know what's happening. I have no more questions.
No, because there's always the next mail truck coming down the street. And I realize that I've spotted mail trucks since I was a kid, and I've never had this thought about English mail trucks, an exchange program. And then I think to myself, this is a reason to speak into a microphone.
Yes, I think that's right. And is it weird for you? I was also wondering, when you got into podcasting 15 years ago, it was a boutique medium, and it was kind of the thing that some people were doing either if they were very foresighted, they just like saw the future, or they weren't quite sure what else to do, so I'll do a podcast. Now it's the main medium for ideas. There are no more magazines. Newspapers don't exist, really. Television news is obviously dumber than it's ever been, and that's saying a lot. So if you want to know what people who are smart and engaged are really thinking, there's no place to go but podcasts. So like you sort of started on the fringe, and now you're at the very center. Is that a weird experience?
It's interesting. I always sort of say, what happens when you become the man? You start off.
Good question.
Well, because things change. Because you go, I want to do podcasts because I want total autonomy and freedom, and I want to do whatever I want to do and say whatever I want to say, and then you become successful, and then someone goes, the sponsors really don't like you talking about COVID as much as you've been talking, or your views on the vaccine or whatever. And then you realize, oh my God, I've become the man. And then some employee comes up to you and goes, hey, I'm getting married in July. I think I could get a couple weeks off. And you're like, oh, you're asking me. Like, you have become the de facto man. I hope you handle that power well, but it is interesting, and you should aspire to becoming the man, or to be in a position where Budweiser wants to pay you, millions of dollars for your boutique beer company, and put it under their umbrella. It's not all bad. You know what I mean? Like when we were sued by patent trolls, I don't know, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, or whatever it was, I was like, they're not suing any other podcast, they're just suing me. And they're like, yep, the patent trolls are just suing you. And I was like, oh, well, then I guess I've arrived.
If you can become patent troll bait, you've won.
I said to a good friend of mine who got divorced, he's like, I got to pay $40,000 a month in support, in alimony or whatever. I got to pay $40,000 a month or whatever it is. And I go, well, the good news is you've arrived.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like Jim Carolla, my dad, couldn't afford $14 a month when he got divorced. So, there's some good that comes along with divorce, being the man, being sued by patent trolls,
I don't know if I want to be the man. I want to be the biblical patriarch. I want to sit at a long table with a tankard of meat in front of me with like a whole crowd of descendants who sit quietly as I tell the same story for the third time.
Yes.
That's what I want.
At the hem of your garment.
Yes, I do.
So let's talk about you for a second. I'm so happy for people like you and for this movement and sort of where it's going. I feel like as much as guys like you were at, and there's the Ben Shapiro's and the Joe Rogans, and the list goes on and on. I'm not trying to exclude anyone, but what I'm saying is I feel like you guys were created more than just the entrepreneurial spirit or freedom of speech, meaning CNN, Fox to a lesser degree, MSNBC, LA Times, New York Times, they all morphed into something that created you and Substack and Elon Musk. Elon Musk didn't need to buy Twitter or X years ago. he was created. This was a creation by what they chose to do and how they chose to do it. And COVID sort of turbocharged and added creatine to it. It just sped everything up because they went harder the direction they were already going. Do you have that sense that in a way we were created by this?
I don't think there's any question about it. And that's why I asked you about the fact that you started 15 years ago, which I think is pretty amazing and farsighted. But yeah, I mean, I think of COVID, and not just COVID, but also the Black Lives Matter riots as many things, as the beginning of the end for the country that we grew up in, but also as a sorting process where most people went along with things that were obviously untrue. They repeated the lies knowingly or not because it's easier. But there was a small percentage of people were like, I'll die before I say something that's untrue, before I read your bumper stickers as if I believe them. I'm not doing that. And it was so interesting to see who those people were. Rogan, I think, is one of the most interesting. I mean, I wasn't that familiar with Joe Rogan before 2020, but I thought he was like hosting, he was a comedian like you, he was a fighter, hosting a reality show. I mean, he was in a kind of different world, and he just kept his curiosity and his fearlessness and was rewarded for it. And there are a bunch of people like that, not at his scale, but there are a bunch of people who had similar trajectories, and it was really as simple as, no, I'm not going to say that. You can't make me say that. I'm going to say what I think is true, which is a very American response, the kind of response that got us freedom from Great Britain in the 18th century. It's a wonderful thing to see. And so that was the upside. And then as a result of that, there's a brand new media landscape. And let's be honest, no one is watching that crap and believing it. Only the true lobotomy victims think that that's real. I mean, it's just transparently fake at this point. It's just like the intel agencies, sending out their talking points and the channels repeating them. And no sentient person thinks that's real. And so that opens up this whole new world, and you're at the center of it, of course, for the free flow of information, the promise of the First Amendment of democracy. So it's pretty thrilling for all the sad things, all the people going to jail, and a lot of people are going to jail. And if Biden wins, a lot of people are going to jail, certainly including me. But in the meantime, we get to experience this intellectual renaissance, and I just find it absolutely exciting.
Do you think you'll be going to jail if Biden is reelected?
Well, sure. I mean, one of the things that there's so many stories that get missed, but there was a group, and I'm interviewing them soon, and I can't wait, of Black nationalist separatist Marxists who in St. Petersburg, Florida, and St. Louis, who were indicted by the Justice Department for their opinions because they were saying things that were too pro-Russia. And these guys are literally facing years in prison for, quote, disinformation. And I checked it, too, because I didn't believe that could actually happen in America since I'm from here. And it didn't used to be this way. They didn't do anything. They weren't caught with bomb-making materials or kiddie porn or the usual setup stories that they concoct in order to justify putting thought criminals in prison. These guys just flat out are indicted and are going on trial for repeating disinformation, for saying things that the regime doesn't like. And because they are Black separatists, by definition, they're on the fringe, and they don't have really any allies, who's on their side exactly? No one on the right and no neoliberal. I mean, even Al Sharpton, notably, is not standing up for them. These guys have basically not been defended. They've got some old-fashioned left-wing First Amendment lawyer, God bless him, defending them, but no one else has stood up for them at all. And so I'm interested in it, not because I'm a Black separatist, of course, or a communist, obviously, but because I believe in speech and I'm an American. And right. So it happens to those guys first. That's just true. I'm sorry. First they came for the Black separatists. That's just real.
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm concerned for sure.
What, they start trotting out things like Christian nationalists, and they just make up a term. And then once they make up the term, then it's a sort of thing where it's I made it all the way through junior high and high school, and I never heard about being on the spectrum for any disease or any anything that could be assigned to you. So, you
didn't have gluten intolerance or ADHD?
Not an option. And neither did any of the poor people I worked with. If you were making a lunch run, you just get 5 of everything and drop it off, and they were happy. There was no dietary needs at all. But at some point, somebody decided that maybe I had Asperger's syndrome, but I was on the spectrum of it. You know what I mean? And so what they do is they introduce something, Asperger's, and you go, what the fuck is Asperger's syndrome? They go, oh, it exists. Yes. And then you go, oh, okay. And then they go, and you're on the spectrum. And you go, me? What do I do? Oh, what are some of the things? Well, you do this. You talk. When you talk, sometimes you close your eyes, or when you're thinking, or whatever it is. And I think they do this. They go, Christian nationalist. And you go, I don't know what that is. They go, oh, it's a big deal. And then you go, well, what is it? And then they go, oh, you're on the spectrum. Like you may not be, leading the march to the Christian Nationalist Church, but you embody many of the things. There's a lot of COVID deniers in that group. There are a lot of people are questioning the election. There's a lot of people that are Trump supporters in that group. There's a lot of people that don't want to be engaged in foreign wars in that group. And you go, oh, so I'm in that group? Yeah, you're in that. Everyone who disagrees with them is in this group. And then they've announced that we need to stop this group. So de facto, you're in their pool. I think that's the game.
Well, you're in the majority, too. And what they hate is the majority.
Right.
What's so interesting is that these are the defenders of democracy, which by definition is a majority rule system. Doesn't mean you ignore the rights of the minority. You don't. You protect them. But the majority decides how the country is governed. That is democracy. That's the definition. And there are different mechanisms for doing that. Ours is representative. But the idea never changes. The majority rules. And you can't be ruled by a minority in a democracy, or it's not a democracy. And yet their attacks are all on the majority of Americans, on white people, on Christians. Christian nationalism is a meaningless marketing phrase. It's Christians. They don't like Christians. People who are sincerely Christians. They hate them, actually. And that's what, the trans stuff is about. When did everyone fall in love with trannies?
I don't know.
And of course, they're not in love with trannies. They're a useful device for finding out, just like the vax, just like BLM, for finding out who's on whose team. So if you wave a tranny in someone's face and the person runs away, that's probably a Christian. Same with the vax, right? Who's got high testosterone levels? Anyone who's not going to take it. So we got to get them out of here because they're a threat. So, but what's so interesting is every sort of despised minority in America right now, officially despised, is actually the majority.
Right.
And that's how you know that it's a subversion of the country. It's a takeover of the country. And of course, they're trying to change who lives here. So, what constitutes a majority is very much up in the air right now. And that's the whole point of the invasion underway, obviously. But it's just, no one ever points that out. Really, you're attacking Christians? I mean, that's at least the plurality in the United States. It historically has been the majority since the very first day, the overwhelming majority. And they're the problem? Maybe you're the problem, actually. And that's just the last thing I would say. It's the one thing these people are good at, it's not maintaining a power grid. It's not fixing your sink. It's not, figuring out what kind of car you should drive. They don't know anything about the physical world. The only thing they're good at, they're incompetent. That's why they're part of these organizations, so they can hide their incompetence. The only thing they're good at is seizing the high ground rhetorically.
Right.
Is coming at you so hard and so fast from so many different directions with ruthless aggression that you, for a moment, a split second, begin to doubt that you're right. I can't believe, white silence is violence.
Right.
What?
Right.
What are you even talking about? White silence is violence. And you're like, okay, white silence is violence. And somehow these people in possession of the least defensible positions, hey, let's take our borders down. Let's get rid of the cops. Let's sexually mutilate your children. There's no defending those positions, any of them, but they find themselves with the whip hand because you're beaten down by their moral aggression. The most immoral people moralize the most aggressively. It's like an amazing mindfuck. I think.
No, it is. And it's basically two people in an elevator and the guy next to you farts and then he just looks at you and goes, why did you fart? And then
you're disgusting. I can't. No, it's worse than that. Well, it's like I'm calling building security. That's an assault.
Right. And then at some point, a third person enters the elevator and they go, that guy just farted in this elevator. And you're like, wow, this is amazing what you're doing. This and by the way, it should be admired at some level that you're able to take the craziest batshit ideas and bully people into agreeing with insanity for fear of being deplatformed or fired or shunned even at the dinner table with their teenage kids, right?
Well, that's it. It's the shunning part. It's not.
Yes.
I do think that's really the fulcrum here. That's how they get away with it. That's the impulse that is very easy to control in people. The fear of being shunned, of being cast out of the group, put on the ice floe away from the tribe. Something in people, and I understand it for evolutionary reasons, obvious ones. No one wants that. That's the thing they want least. And if you threaten that, like you can't come to Thanksgiving dinner because you didn't get the vax, people will get the vax. Like that's a bigger threat than getting fired for most people.
Yes,
I think.
Shunned is a universal. It's something that human beings universally try to avoid. It's not. It's like some human beings enjoy the taste of poi, and some of them like chicken liver. But many don't, and can be vocal about it. But shunning it cuts to the universal core of humanity, and that's why it's it's an effective weapon, and that's why it's trotted out. And if you look at all things COVID or Black Lives Matter or defund the police or the border or any of the things or all the trans movement stuff, it's all had an undercurrent of shunning. Do you want to be shunned? And the answer is no. So then you must go along with 2 + 2 = 5. And most people go, if that's what it takes not to be shunned, then I will agree with you that 2 + 2 = 5.
Of course. And it's particularly effective with women. You don't have a black square in your Instagram. I mean, because women, of course, are much more relationship oriented. It's about they understand themselves in terms of their relationships with other people, and more power, Godspeed. And I think it's really important that they're that way. I'm not criticizing anybody, but it's true. They're herd oriented, and if you threaten them, I mean, there's some percentage of the male population's like, well, I kind of see myself standing alone on the prairie, anyway.
Right.
I should be out here by myself hunting mastodons, but very few women can live with the idea of being a lone wolf. That's just not part of the makeup, the biological makeup of women. And again, thank God it's not. But for political purposes, it's very easy to subvert that and to leverage it for your benefit. And if you look at the polling on any question, it breaks down to unmarried women versus everyone else. Unmarried women are, the most easy to control with the threat of shunning,
right?
Because they're alone, right? I mean, that's just. I'm sorry. I guess you're not allowed to say that, but it's not an attack on anyone. It's an observation of a very apparent reality all around us.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Putin. Lots of. I mean,
love that man.
Yeah. Okay. So here's okay. A couple things. I think you're a very intuitive person. And you're sort of psychologically wired. I mean, we've talked enough to realize that beyond politics and beyond COVID or the border or any of this stuff or the next election, there's a kind of a psychodynamic pursuit where you're just sort of like, I kind of want to know who a person is and what motivates them. I'm interested in this experiment that we're all conducting here called life and human beings and interactions. And I think of you as a very intuitive person that way. So what was your just general vibe from Putin, just being in the same room with him?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, and I've said this many times, nobody believes me, but I really didn't know very much about the current state. Well, I knew very little about the current state of Russia. It's not my area. I'm not a Russian speaker. So I had read about Putin, of course, as people who try to be informed do, but I'm not an expert on Putin. I'm not now an expert on Putin. So I didn't really know what to think, and I was trying to shut out all the preconceptions because you should do that and come to things fresh if you can. And so my view was, one, he seemed a little more amped up, a little more anxious than I imagined he would be. He did not He seemed like the kind of person who prepared overly much and had something to say, and he was going to kind of repeat it. He calmed down. It was over 2 hours, the conversation on camera. So he did calm down. So that's the first thing. I was surprised by that. Second, I thought that he seemed legitimately wounded by the rejection of the West. I mean, I don't think there's any, you can watch it. I think it's obvious in there. He is famous for his emotional control. He's not an emoter. If he had ADHD, he wouldn't tell you. But what did come through for sure is that his feelings were, I don't know if feelings were hurt. He was stung by the rejection of the West. And I certainly understand why the West has rejected Russia. It doesn't want anything to do with Russia. He asked to join NATO. He asked to join in a joint missile treaty with the United States, and let's aim all our missiles at Iran. He pitched this to George W. Bush, who accepted it, and then Condi Rice, one of the dumbest people in American foreign policy, convinced him that, no, we have to hate Russia. And so from his perspective, it's like, well, why? Why wouldn't it be better to be allies? You know, why are you trying to put nuclear weapons on my border? These are real questions, and it's not enough to dismiss anyone who asked them as a tool of Russia. Of course, I'm not a tool of Russia. I'm an American in every sense. And in fact, I'm so American that I forced myself to go to Russia at my own expense, booked it myself to the interview because I have a right to do it. And I think it's important to preserve that right by exercising it. I have a right to speak to anyone I want and to gather any information I feel I need in order to make decisions about how my government's performing, because it's a democracy. Okay, that's my opinion. So I'm very American. But I look at this and I'm like, what's the answer? Why, if Russia asked to join NATO 24 years ago, why couldn't they join NATO? And if they want to join in a missile agreement with us to protect our mutual interests from Iran, why did we turn them down? And why are we expanding NATO eastward? And why are we trying to put nuclear weapons on their western border? And once we try to do that, why are we surprised that they react with violence as they did? And to what extent did we anticipate they were going to invade Ukraine when we tried to push Ukraine into NATO? Well, of course, you know the answers to all of these questions. And the answer to the last question is, we knew they were going to do that, and that's why we were publicly pushing Ukraine to join NATO. The Biden administration wanted this war because they thought that they could destabilize Russia and get rid of Putin and put in someone more compliant. That's the truth. Now, whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, it's revealing of their deep ignorance and their hubris. They're just very stupid, unimpressive people is part of the answer to all of these questions. They can't see the big picture, and they don't really care about American interests. But that was their plan. They did this, okay? So when you read some court stenographer from the Associated Press or Reuters or one of these other, mindless, truly mindless state media organizations calling this an unprovoked war of aggression, it was not an unprovoked war of aggression. It was a very much provoked war of aggression. Doesn't mean it was justifiable. Doesn't mean it's a good idea. It was not a good idea. Not backing the war in Ukraine. I wish it hadn't happened. But it was provoked, and it was provoked by the Biden administration and by the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, whatever we're calling her now, Harris, at the Munich Security Conference when she said at a press conference, we want you, Zelensky, to join NATO. And days later, Russia moved over the border. So one led to the other, and they knew that it would when they sent their little moron, their little puppet over there to say this in public. I mean, sure, she doesn't know, right. And she doesn't know anything. But she was a tool for them to get that message in order to provoke the response that they got. And there's kind of no debate about that, actually, at this point. No honest person can look at the facts and reach another conclusion, in my opinion. And if they can, then what's the other conclusion? Tell me how I'm wrong. But no one will ever tell you how you're wrong. They just try to assassinate your character or try and kill you, like they did to Gonzalo Lira, an American citizen murdered in Ukraine by the Ukrainian government with the backing of the Biden administration because he complained.
Wasn't there an attempt on you? Wasn't there a car bomb or something? Did I catch that? What was that?
Yep. I'm gonna pass on that question.
I get it.
But look, the point is that there is no Ukrainian government. It's an annex of the State Department. It's run by the State Department and by our intel services. The New York Times had a big piece on this the other day, but it was very obvious from the very beginning that this is a proxy war waged by a proxy government against a sovereign state. Okay, the sovereign state's Russia. The non-sovereign state is Ukraine. It's not a sovereign state. It's run by the United States, by the Biden administration, and by Toria Nuland, who just resigned today. So I don't want any of this to be true. I don't like being mad at my government. I am an American. I look forward to a day where I can be proud of my government because it acts in the interest of my country and not in the interest of some sort of weird multinational cabal with its own interests, which is clearly what's happening, obviously. But that's just a fact. So anybody who writes in a news story the unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine is just lying. You're just a liar. So why don't you go do something that, why don't you go sell timeshares or something where you're allowed to lie? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Why are you in the news business where honesty is the most important quality? It's table stakes. If you're not honest, you can't be in this business. And if you're a committed liar, then you definitely can't be in this business.
Last question for you, Tucker. And I hope to see you at your, in your home court over there and sit down and be a guest on your show and do a longer version of this. And I think we're trying to work that out. But just a prediction, if Trump gets reelected, and it sort of looks like he is, what are they going to do? I mean, what can we look forward to? Because there's already been plans on the table to literally get out in the street and fight it out by certain organizations. And they're not talking about with Twitter. They're talking about taking to the streets. I mean, is it going to be chaos? Is it going to be some anarchy? Or what are they going to do? We know they're not going to quietly go into the night and start preparing for the next election. There's going to be something. And what is that going to look like?
I don't know. I mean, I should just state my strong preference up front, which is continuity, sameness, normalcy. The system operates as designed, where the people get to decide who their leaders are. There's no cheating. They're planning to cheat. Obviously, they said that out loud a couple of days ago when the Attorney General announced in Selma, Alabama, that voter ID is racist.
Right. I always love that.
Because black people don't have Voter ID is racist, but a cashless society in which you have to have a credit card in order to live, that's not racist.
Right.
Because you get a credit card without an ID. Okay. The whole thing is nonsensical. So they're going to try and cheat. They've told us that. I hope they fail. But at that point, they have two options. One, sort of like try to subvert Trump, keep the same policies in place, call him something else, keep the border open, keep the tax code the same, everything, the big things remain the same. They can try that. They tried that last time, and they're pretty successful, actually, in doing that. Or they can get super radical. And, again, I'm not hoping for this, but there are millions of young men from foreign countries, not American, don't speak English, living in our country now. And no one has told us why they're here, why the U.S. government has paid to bring them here, which it has. Our tax dollars have brought them here by plane or up the Pan American Highway through the Darien Gap to here. That's a fact. Alejandro Mayorkas has been a part of that effort. So we're paying to bring millions of military-age young men to the United States where they now reside. There are no jobs for them, and we can't afford to give them the services that we give our own citizens because we're already bankrupt. So what is the point of this? No one's trying to integrate them into American society. There's no more melting pot. We're not trying to make them Americans. So why are we doing this? And, I don't know the answer to that, but I hope that violence isn't part of the calculation. And I think that it very well could be. I mean, these people applauded when Ashley Babbitt, who's 5'2" and unarmed, was shot to death by Michael Byrd without any warning at all. They just murdered her right in the Capitol. And Morning Joe gave them a round of applause and said, I wish they'd killed more. And so, these are people who are pro-violence. They were pro-murdering Ashley Babbitt. That's all you need to know.
Well,
and
on the subject of who farted in the elevator, there was one shot fired on January 6th. One, and you're calling it an armed insurrection, and there was one shot fired, and it was fired by a Capitol Hill police officer killing a midget woman, a diminutive woman. And you're going to spin that into an armed insurrection. And we'll call that guy a hero, and we'll lock up everyone else who wandered through the halls and throw away the key, and this guy will get no punishment, and no one at Morning Joe or CNN and none of the people that never stop talking about police violence will ever bring it up.
Well, how could you watch the tape of Ashley Babbitt drowning in her own blood and feel anything but sadness? But they didn't feel sadness. I watched that tape. It was the first thing I watched on that day, on January 6, 2021. It was the first thing I watched. I had no idea who she was or why she was shot. And the first thing I felt was sadness as the father of daughters, as someone who loves other people, just likes people, doesn't like to see people die from gunshot wounds. I felt sadness. That was not their response. Their first response was she deserved it, without even knowing. It turns out she didn't deserve it at all. But leaving aside any of that, their gut response was she deserved it. So anyone who approaches videotape of a woman dying of a gunshot wound and applauds is someone who's going to be very comfortable using force against fellow Americans, because they've already shown that they're comfortable with it. So they're dangerous, is what I'm saying, and I mean that.
A sober note to go out on.
Sorry.
I want to give you a plug, though. Tucker on X and the show streaming on X, Tucker Carlson Network as well, tuckercarlson.com. It brings me great joy to see all the people that broke away from the plantation and are not only free, but thriving and free. And it gives me hope for the future, and I hope I can come see it soon at your home base.
You were there first, man. 15 years. Congratulations, Adam.
Thanks, Tucker. Appreciate it. All right. Comedian Jamie Lissow is going to be in here next, and we'll do that right after this. Let me tell you about Simply Safe. According to FBI data, most home break-ins happen in broad daylight. As days get longer, you need to protect your home with Simply Safe. We've used Simply Safe here since they've been sponsors, and that's been over a decade. And when you move, you can pick up your system and take it with you. So you can have an apartment or rental or something, and then you go buy a house and you take the system with you. Named Best Home Security System of 2024 by U.S. News and World Report. Best customer service according to Newsweek. 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day. Half the cost of traditional home security. No long-term contracts. 60 days risk-free. If you don't love your system, you can return it for a full refund. Protect your home today, and my listeners get 20% off any new Simply Safe, 2 eyes in there, any new Simply Safe system, and they sign up with Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/Adam and save that 20%. It's simplysafe.com/Adam.
I'm having a weird week. The other day I noticed if you watch all the Star Wars movies back to back in order and really pay close attention, you're a friggin' loser. Yeah, some of these are gonna be jokes. That's not one of them.
Jamie Lissow is on the Adam Carolla Show.
Good to see you, Jamie.
Good to see you.
Dates coming up. Covina, Laugh Factory, March 7th. And then Reno, Nevada, Laugh Factory coming up March 14th through the 16th. And you can go to Jamie, and I'll spell it out, LISSOW.com to find out more dates.
Thank you. Yeah, I also own RobSchneidersFriend.com. If anyone forgets my name.
Well, it's trickle-down economics, because Sandler does the thing, and then it trickles down, and it trickles down, and it just keeps trickling down.
I think I bought Adam Sandler's Friend.com. None of this is a joke.
Oh, really?
I believe I own Adam Sandler's Friend.com and RobSchneidersFriend.com.
So for you live in Alaska, right?
Yeah.
And where'd you grow up?
I grew up in upstate New York.
And what's Alaska like as a? I mean, it's the greatest place to visit, but what's living in Alaska like?
I've made a horrible mistake. Like, it's a great place to visit, but the situation I'm in is, it was like I met this girl and she was from Alaska, and I met her doing a gig up in Alaska, and she was the owner's daughter, and we fell like immediately in love and got married like really quickly, and then it sort of led to we ended up, she wanted to move back near her family, and then we moved there, and then I think as we were moving, she met a guy. Like as we were moving things into
Really?
it was so quickly.
Wait, you were married?
We're married.
How long had you been married?
It was 16 years.
But how long until when did she meet the guy?
That's a questionable.
It's a range.
Yeah, it's a range, and then
What's the low end of the range?
I would say it might have been a bit. So we kind of moved there, and then so now I'm like divorced guy in Alaska. So that's where my kids live, and that's where I go to see them.
I don't have many Alaskan jokes, and I've never done it on stage, but I always said I think I could walk into any bar in Alaska and just put a windbreaker on and yell "Federal Marshal," and everyone would jive out of a window. I wouldn't have to finish. I'd just go, "Federal Marshal, I have a warrant for," and no one would ever hear. You'd just see every human being in the bar just do a shoulder roll and dive out of a window.
Glass everywhere.
Yeah, I saw people hiding out. The other day, I was at a coffee shop with my son. And he goes, "Oh my God, that guy looks just like Santa Claus." And I looked over, and he could have been talking about like 7 guys.
Right, a lot of
It's
fat bearded
felons and
dudes.
Santa Claus lookalikes.
So
They're really proud of their salmon there too. You talked shit on their salmon. They were not having it.
listen, I will. When I was playing the club, I did not. The partisan crowd turned against me almost immediately because I dissed their salmon. For first off, if a fish is your thing, fucking move on. You know what I mean? Like as a society. I mean, I got a lot of trouble with your people and Manny Pacquiao, which is
Let's not revisit that.
if you're living and dying with a middleweight boxer, that's not a good sign for your society. You know what I mean? Well, the fight over there is at 3 a.m. and 80% of the Philippines is up watching TV at 3 a.m. on a school night. You know what I mean? Because this 140-pound guy is going to punch a Mexican. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you shouldn't base all your pride on a fish. You know, if I say your salmon isn't as good as I thought it would be, you should be able to not be wounded and keep going. You know what I mean?
I think you're still banned.
It's kind of the beauty of being from L.A. You could just come up, anyone could come up to anyone and just go, "Oh, fucking Rams suck." And you go, "Yeah, I know." And you just walk away. You can say whatever you wanted about anybody in L.A. because we're not married to any fish or fighter.
Yeah, if someone shits on your salmon
with an F.
and your feelings are hurt, you don't have a lot going on.
Right. So I simply said that I pulled, salmon out of the stream, had it filleted and made for us that evening, and it tasted the same as the frozen one I got from Trader Joe's when I was back in Glendale. And everyone went, "What?" This was heresy. This was heresy to these people. And I was like, look, I'll do the same thing. I got a jack off Hollywood buddy who does every time you go out to dinner with him, he's like, kettle one, kettle one, martini, shaken, not bruised, stirred, not shaken, with 1 pimento olive and 1 onion and 1 tear from a dwarf, And I'm like, you can't even fucking tell the difference between Smirnoff and Kettle One. He's, "Yes, I can. I go, "All right. I'm going to get us some shots, and we're going to figure this out." And he immediately just went, "Yeah, okay, fuck it. I can't tell the difference." And I will take those Alaskan people. I will go down to Trader Joe's. I will get myself a piece of frozen salmon, and I will prepare it with dill and love. And we'll pull one out of the stream, and we'll see if they can tell the difference. Because I couldn't. Of course, the crowd turned against me.
Did you,
Dawson? Did you taste the difference?
Yeah, no, I did. It was unremarkable, is what it was.
It tasted like salmon.
It tasted exactly like salmon, and it may go to the sturdiness of the fish. Salmon have to swim upstream of a major current to go lay their eggs and die. Maybe they're just so strong that they still taste as good as they did out of the river from a Ralph's the couple weeks later.
This is really more of a tip of the cap to Trader Joe's than it is an indictment over their salmon.
Right.
I'm the kind of person where if I said that on stage and they got upset, I would immediately fold and I would backtrack. I feel like that is not the tactic you would take.
I've had people say this to me a million times. I had an Uber driver recently who gave me stickers with hearts on them and he was in his 50s or 60s, and he was one of these guys that put together words and that turned into acronyms that stood for, like, you know what Gary Busey does?
Right.
Oh, right.
That's what he did. He kept telling, you know, I don't even know any of them, but the Gary Busey isms where they'll go, it's not loss. Loss is losing optimism, Southern societies, you know, and you go, huh? And this guy gave me 18 of those. And I go, oh, it's just like Gary Busey. And he goes, who?
Oh.
And I go, Gary Busey just does what you do. And by the way, he's only 6 years older than you, and we're in Malibu right now. And he's like, I don't know that he does that. And I'm like, you don't know Gary Busey? That's because that's what you do. That's what he does. And then he gave me stickers with hearts. But he told me I was brave, you know, for my stances on things. And I go, I'm not brave. It's the truth. The truth is the truth. It's not there to be negotiated or reckoned with. It's just the truth. And then you're allowed to say it. And then he goes, yeah, but that was brave. And I go, it's not brave. Right. If you're right, if it's the truth, then it's.
Did he follow it up with an acronym? What was the acronym for brave?
Oh God,
brave the acronym for.
Boy, really after veracity in education.
Right. That's
perfect.
I mean, how many of those Gary Buseys of them?
He has books. I don't even know.
This fucking guy, it's all he did the whole Uber ride from Santa Monica to Malibu, and he had no idea that Gary Busey did that. Or maybe he was lying.
Right.
Maybe he knew the jig was up.
Yeah, I feel like every Uber driver I've ever had is telling me about the other thing they have going on.
Yeah,
like they all have some sort of thing they wish they were doing.
Yeah,
like like some sort of like I'm opening a yoga studio.
Yeah,
I got this abbreviation thing going. I feel like every Uber driver I have wants me to think he's doing it just for fun.
It's hard to argue with what is, though. Like when I always said, when I used to teach comedy traffic school way back in the day, and they would tell me, these people are paying an extra $5 to be with a comedian because they can go to Sears for $19, but they're paying $24 for us, you know? And they would always go, you got to start by really embellishing your bona fides as a comedian.
Yeah.
You know, you got to talk about how good things are going and how much you're kicking ass out there and sought after and so on and so forth. And I was like, but we're at a YMCA in Arleta on Sunday, and it's 7:30 in the morning. What fucking successful comedian would be paid $80 to sit in a YMCA in Arleta and stand here for 9 hours?
Right.
And they're like, you got to bolster it. And I'm like, they're not going to believe it. So meaning you're telling me all about your rich life and all the businesses and all the things, but I'm sitting in the back of your Tercel. It smells weird. And for $11 on a Wednesday night, you're driving me all the way down PCH.
So true.
How can it be going good? Have you ever got this, though, with the driver? There's an opposite version of this. There's the guy who's driving you, who's telling you about, like, his boat. And I'm like, what the fuck do you get a boat? You know what I mean? And they go, oh, it's a 22-footer. We do some fishing. We do offshore fishing or whatever. And you go, like, you own a boat. Like, you want to go.
Yes.
How do you don't, you're a loser. Why do you're driving me somewhere. Why do you have a boat?
I have oftentimes gotten out and just felt like shit about myself.
Good.
Based on what the guy said.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like he's doing better than me, for sure.
I think there are Uber drivers who are just trying to get out of the house.
I met one of them.
Right. Like, they have a nice car, like leather interior.
Met the dude. He used to work for a small private aircraft manufacturing company, wearing a cardigan, driving a Lexus, just saying he's retired and he likes talking to people and driving around. Told me that half the cost of any private plane is from insurance and lawyers. That there's so much liability in selling an aircraft that a $600,000 plane is $1.2 million because of all the fucking liability.
I feel like that's the way to tell me you don't really love your wife without telling me you don't love your wife. Like he's looking for a reason to get out.
I like to get up. I like to get out. And I like to talk to strangers on the way to an airport. Right. Like I so much hate spending time with my wife that I will recommend local Italian restaurants to people I'll never see ever again in lieu of sitting with my wife and talking to her about something that's meaningful to her.
Yeah, those guys exist.
Yeah. What is all right, we need a Gary Buseyism. We need, by the way, there's thousands of hours of video.
I've not heard a Gary Buseyism.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't try driving Uber anytime soon. Not if I jump in the back of that, Jack. Yeah.
Change. Creating happiness and new guiding energy.
Oh, I see.
See? He sits around. And but there's tape. There's tons,
he can just rattle these off the top of his head.
Here's a good one. Laugh. Looking and understanding goofy humans.
There you go. I wish I was armed with a few of these in the back of that guy's Uber. And
Truth. Taking real understanding to heart.
There's a fear one, right? Like
false evidence appearing real.
Doing a radical, doing a radical experiment. That's his book. He's got a book out.
His book is Bible, Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth.
Now, how did this 63-year-old guy, who, by the way, told me that he once drag raced Gary Busey.
That's a confusing sentence.
He told me when I brought up Gary Busey, and I was like, how about the Buseyisms? Like, I don't know anything about that. But 41 years ago, I was driving down Sunset, and he pulled up next to me in a 67 Camaro, and we dragged. Like, okay, so you're pretty familiar with Gary Busey, but just not that familiar?
Yeah. But you can recognize him in the car next to you.
Yeah.
And challenge him to who's first at the next stoplight.
All right. We should know, and it should be noted that Felipe Esparza, comedian, was in here yesterday, and he broke his microphone off.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's a powerful man.
He's great. Felipe was in our Rob Schneider TV show on Netflix. He was fantastic.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He was using a mic just like yours. I think he sort of
having some trouble
put
with
his
it.
hand on it, and it literally just broke.
Snapped.
Broke off.
That's like
Snap.
that would be my biggest fear. Was it while you guys were talking?
Yeah.
It was on the...
Yeah, it snapped mid-conversation.
Wow.
And,
but then he just went like a ring announcer, you know, when they used to come down from the ceiling. I used to like that. The only way we could get a microphone into a boxing ring is to drop it from 80 feet on a 200-foot cord. You know, that had to be someone's job, too. Reel in the mic. Just come right down from the ceiling.
Bluetooth really solved the lowered mic.
Yeah. I kind of, to me, it was my New Year's, you know, the dropping of the ball. You know what I mean? Like, that meant it was fight time. That thing started coming down from the ceiling.
And then you let go, it goes back
If
up.
I was in control of the ring mic, and as the guy started talking, if I wanted him to wrap it up, I'd just start bringing it back up again.
some playoff music.
And then he'd start pulling it down, and I'd start pulling it back up again. And eventually, I'd just hang it like 3 foot above his head, and he'd have to go, and fighting by way of Laughlin, Nevada. Like,
let's get ready.
So, what the fuck was I talking about?
Felipe broke the mic.
Felipe broke the mic. And as soon as it broke, I said, blame Dr. Drew. Because Dr. Drew cannot stop fidgeting with the mic. He's always adjusting it. He's holding it with both hands. He cannot leave it alone.
He's always in motion.
No matter how much instruction, how much the pleadings of me to just leave the fucking mic alone, Drew. Just point it where your fucking mouth is and then leave it there. You know, it says he has to lean back and then the bass comes off and he's fiddling and futzing with it. I said that yesterday. 14 hours later, Dr. Drew came in this morning to do our show together, looked at his mic, which was exactly fine, and reached his fist up and punched it down. And I'm like, oh, you definitely broke this. Like, there's a wing nut on the side that you can just loosen, adjust it to where you would like it, and then retighten it. You don't have to fight it off. I said, like, Dr. Drew, in your car, when the valet brings it back and the seat's too far forward, do you get and push your feet against the dashboard and like mash it back, or do you use the fucking switch?
You have to get a lowered mic for Drew.
Well, bring it down from the ceiling. Right. Oh, he would end up hanging himself with it. He'd be wrestling. He'd be struggling. That's where we'd find him. And then you know what I'd do if I found him hanging? I'd show up before I call the cops. I'd pull his pants down. And I'd put his hand on his dick. And then I would call the cops. And I'd go bring the cameras in. Because Dr. Drew definitely died doing autoerotic asphyxiation. This is how I found him.
I just saw Dr. Drew. He came to my show in Pasadena.
At the Ice House?
2 days ago. Yeah.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. Brought his wife. Came to watch the show.
Did he rush the stage and punch the mic a few times, or did he just sit?
Yeah. I go, how do you lower this mic stand? He came up and just snapped it in half over his knee. Yeah, he just took the whole thing.
Headlock.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. God bless.
Yeah, it was nice. I loved it.
Right?
I'm a huge fan of Dr. How would Dr. Drew have get experience with mics? He's only hosted 30,000 television shows and radio shows.
He is a wild, uncoachable stallion who needs to be free.
He's a passionate man.
He's a man of exquisite passion who cannot. I've tried to break him a couple of times. You know.
Yeah.
Can't do it. He did things that drive me nuts because I have hypervigilance disorder. And when I tell people to do stuff and then they don't do it, I go insane.
Yeah.
And he used to get his coffee right when Loveline started. Every single night, they'd just bring the coffee and they'd hand to him right as I started talking. And then I'd always hear him go, "Thank you." Like right in the middle of me doing the beginning of the show. And I would just go, "Drew, don't thank the person into the mic. No one knows who you're talking to. You can't do that."
Would he press
do the mug raise, something,
Thumbs
or
up,
tip of the cap?
Would he press a button to make coffee, or would he try to wring it out, the whole machine? Would he lift it up and just try to squeeze it?
He breaks every device. He pulled his steering wheel off the other day trying to drive. You should see him golf. He hits down on the ball. He beats it into the turf. Yeah. Yeah, he's
the best.
He's an uncoachable, untamable stallion.
I drove in. He was driving out. He had a hole in the bottom of his car. He had his feet sticking out.
That's how he breaks. He breaks like Fred Flintstone.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'll get the car going that way and he'll break that way too with the feet. Yeah. He can't handle mechanical stuff. And then he goes, and then he always goes, "I have flippers for arms. I have flippers for arms." I go, "Good, then keep your fucking flippers by your side. Then stop waving them around everywhere. Then if you have an issue, then put them on your lap."
If you're self-aware enough to know you have flippers, keep them down.
Yeah.
Keep them at your side.
He
says he won't turn the knob because he's too afraid to.
He's
That's
like,
why he punches the mic.
No, yeah, he has the release for the adjustable, the concept that you turn a wing nut a quarter turn and the world is your oyster. We can move that. We can move it anywhere we want, and then a quarter turn back and it's locked off. But no, he's going to lock it off and then get out a torch and heat up the steel and then try to bend it to his will. Jesus Christ, what's up with everyone?
Drew's great, man. I did. I'm dating. My girlfriend's a doctor and she loves Dr. Drew, and so I wanted them to meet, and so we were kind of talking, and he came out to the Pasadena show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And he didn't knock anything down or do anything of that nature with his flipper.
Oh, he's very well behaved.
So is your girlfriend your doctor?
Yeah, she's my doctor, and it's been interesting. Like she, comedians don't have health insurance. Mm-hmm. Like we don't really take care of ourselves, and like I remember my stomach hurt once. My sister's a nurse, and she was like, "You should go to the emergency room. I know you don't have insurance, but like even if it's a couple $1,000s, you should go." And I remember I just like ate a banana.
Yeah,
and I was like, maybe this will fix it. I'm not going. Yeah. But so she's really good at making me get stuff done. Like I just did a colonoscopy, which I would have never done.
Yeah,
have you done the colonoscopy?
Yeah. Drew set it up.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He hooked it up.
He hooked me up. I gotta do another one, but yeah.
Not physically. He hooked, or did he? When you set it up, he set you up with a appointment, or he actually?
No, he put a hook up my ass. Yeah, he hooked me up at the appointment. Yeah, he would. Drew won't even work on his own kids. Yeah.
I was just.
How'd you like your colonoscopy?
I woke. It was my girlfriend's friend, which I didn't love. She goes, "My friend's really good. He's gonna it's like because I was so nervous because I thought you could be 50, you had to wait till you're 50, and then they changed it. They made it 45, and so I'm immediately like, man, they just changed that number, and now I'm fucking 4 years late. Like, how did that happen? I thought it was early. And so she goes, my friend does it. He's like super good at this. Like it's his specialty. It's what he's always wanted to do. And then I go, well, I feel like that's almost like I don't want a guy that's like, fuck this job, but I also don't want someone that's like, that's having the time of his life.
Right.
Either. Like I want something kind of in the middle.
I don't want you to enjoy this.
Yeah. And so it was, I woke up in the middle of it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Which was like as traumatic as you would imagine.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was like, then they gave me more anesthesia. And so then like when I left, I had like a whole day of like that night she goes, man, she goes, thanks for all that stuff, like all the stuff you bought me. And I had no memory. We'd gone like shopping and I bought her a bunch of stuff. And then I go, I got to call my manager. We had a bunch of like contracts to go over. And she goes, you did that at lunch. Like you stepped out and did. So I had a few things where I don't remember anything that happened. But with that medicine, you think it's not like you're drunk and you feel like you absolutely are in control of your faculties and you're just not. So it's even more dangerous.
Yeah. That's the Michael Jackson situation.
Yeah.
He got the Jesus juice. Or what do they call it? What is that?
Mother's milk? What do they call
mother's
it?
milk. Yeah, that one's mother's milk. But it's, what is the medication? You guys know it.
It's a
Propofol.
Propofol. Yeah, there's too many. COVID got too many new names in my head.
Yeah.
No,
I think they give you a little fentanyl for the colonoscopy, which I know that gets a bad rap on the street, but it worked.
Wow, it's funny. It got into this country up someone's ass.
Yeah.
Now it's come full circle. Wow.
Oh, that's good to know. I think I have mine scheduled for end of March. And the only thing I was hoping, because I've heard you tell your stories, that they put you under a little bit and you make friends with the anesthesiologist. And that's the only thing I'm excited about.
It's good. Propofol's awesome.
Get really high.
Oh, Propofol's is awesome.
Yeah.
You're going to love it, Dawson. All right, something I haven't gotten to in a long while, but I feel Jamie would be good for this. So the RFK Night of Laughter benefit that we did a couple of weeks ago, the LA Times wrote an article.
Yeah, this is a great event. Cheryl Hines was there. Trey Stewart, Dustin Ibarra, Erica Rhodes, Mike Binder, Jeremy Piven, Adam Carolla, and
Rob Schneider,
and Jamie Lissow's friend.
You're right. Yeah, and it was a packed theater, probably, I don't know, 1,400 people or whatever. Big old, majestic kind of, I think it was called $1 billion theater or $1 million theater. Anyway, it was a night. It was a nice night. RFK Jr. was great. Cheryl Hines were great. Everyone. Oftentimes, these kind of gigs, you're a little worried about the crowd.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody killed. All the comedians killed. The crowd was great. I was like worried about being a little too edgy or something, you know. I didn't know. Because RFK Jr., he's a regal-looking guy. So he's a Kennedy, for Christ's sake. And he's just sitting in the front row, and I'm just, telling my jokes, and I was like... And somebody said, let's see, and Mike Binder just said, just go for it. Just go for it. Just fucking go for it. And I was like, okay, I'll just go for it. And I would say, I think I'm realistic. I'll tell you the nights that were good and the nights that weren't good. I will tell you I crushed, and everybody else was good. But I'll give myself the crushing designation on this. I thought
Rob actually called me the next day just to talk about how much you crushed. That's why he called me.
Awesome. RFK laughing the whole time?
Yeah, everyone was great. RFK called me the next day, told me all the good stuff, and it was a good night. Now, the LA Times has to write an article about it.
Well, they have to report the event.
And it's a very nuanced and insightful take.
Right. So I'm thinking to myself, well, they're not going to like it. And they're not going to like it. And I'm not sure. I don't even know who they decide to like and who they decide to not like.
Did you know that they were even there? Or somebody?
No, I didn't. I didn't know. Lots of security and lots of camaraderie, and the comedians were all great. And they hung out and watched everyone's set and all that kind of stuff. And everyone did real good. And it was a good audience. a real good audience and a real good night. Like everybody was solid as shit and got tons of laughs. And way over expectations because, night of comedy with the charity and stuff, it's just normally
you never know.
People are fucking eating and their backs to walking in and out and stuff. I mean,
sure.
It was as good as it could have went. Everybody had their own, kind of style. And I was like, well, the LA Times has to hate this. And they have to hate it, A, because I was involved with it, and B, they don't like Kennedy, even though I don't know why, but I guess they think he's going to take votes away from Biden. And what do I say to everybody who's like, oh, I hate Kennedy, and I hate Trump, or I hate whoever. Do you love Joe Biden? Do you love the lying, inept, corrupt, horrible policy-laden, decrepit fucking sociopath? Like, is that's your LA Times? This is your guy?
Who do you love? Like,
this is your guy. Let's talk about your guy. Let's talk about why you love your guy so much. I know you keep telling me he's not the other guy.
A lot of haterade.
He's not Trump and he's not Kennedy, but let's talk about what kind of job your guy's doing. Should we talk about the border? Do you want to talk about Ukraine? What do we want the economy? Like, what do we want to talk about? Let's talk about your guy. But they're all in for Biden, and so they hate Kennedy. And I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, but the New York Times is going to have, the LA Times is going to have a little bit of a difficult putt here. Because I'm looking down on this list, and Trey Stewart is black.
Oh.
That's going to be an issue. They can't say he sucks. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And Erica Rhodes is a woman, so that's going to be weird. And Dustin Ybarra is, I think, Hispanic or some version of it. So now you have your protected class, LA Times, and you can't just go, all the comedians sucked, but you do want to say the night sucked. How are you going to carve this out? How you can't say the black guy sucked, or you can't go all the comedians suck because you're colluding women and Hispanics and black people, and you've taken an oath to never criticize any of them. So what?
This is a challenge.
What are we going to do here? So you can read it, and it's funny. They make a little carve out.
A comedy show where RFK Jr. was not the butt of the joke. Okay. Prominent anti-vaxxer and misinformation disseminator Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Misinformation disseminator. Like the LA Times wasn't wrong about every motherfucking thing about COVID. Everything.
It's the first two words are a good complisalt. Prominent anti-vaxxer.
And misinformation. Yeah. All right. Yeah. They didn't get anything wrong.
Has been the butt of many late-night jokes since announcing his bid for the presidency last spring. But this week, the son of the late Robert Kennedy finally found an audience to laugh with him, not at him. By the way, notice how he's Robert Kennedy now and no longer Bobby Kennedy.
Oh, that's right.
The Kennedy campaign hosted a night of laughter with RFK Jr. and friends, a fundraiser at downtown LA's $1 Million Theater, with RFK Jr. himself in attendance. The 2-hour-plus show attracted a sold-out crowd of supporters who paid upward of $150 a ticket for a rare opportunity to watch their Democrat-turned-independent candidate championed by comedians rather than lampooned. Billed as the first of several comedy shows around the country as we forge our way to the White House, the show featured sets from 7 stand-up comics and was emceed by RFK Jr.'s wife, Cheryl Hines, the actor who plays Larry David's ex-wife on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Ticket holders clad in Kennedy 2024 hats and Declare Your Independence promotional garb lined up around 2.5 city blocks near Grand Central Market to attend. The majority of Wednesday night's audience appeared to skew younger than the typical crowds at the former President Trump's rallies and President Biden's pressers. The RFK Jr. devotees, mostly white men and women in their 30s and 40s, packed into the small lobby of the historic venue, taking selfies next to cleverly designed reimaginations of classic movie posters with Kennedy's image. There he was in the leather jacket for Rebel with a Cause. Rebel with a Cause. Okay.
Yeah.
On a rearing stallion for the Lone Ranger, and so on. Folks willing to speak to the mainstream media one of many nefarious enemies on Kennedy's list, said they were registered Republicans who'd voted for Trump in the last election but were seeking change, and someone younger. And Bobby, as they call him, is 70, so he's a mere pup next to Biden and Trump. But aside from the oddball positioning of the fundraising event itself, was it actually funny? Not particularly.
Except for everybody crushed. Everybody.
Except the laughter.
Yeah, except for all the laughter. Yeah.
Openers, Trey Stewart, Dustin Ibarra,
Okay.
and Erica Rhodes.
Let's hear it.
Fared better than the older.
You have to, don't you? You have to, LA Times. You have to carve out.
Congrats to them.
But you can't see. This is very interesting dance they're forced to do. Now, they could just fucking show up and review something.
Right.
And I've had this complaint many times on a shit review. I feel like you're compelled to say if the night was rock and roll. I mean, it was rock and roll laughter out big time. I think when you review that, you can say, not my cup of tea.
Sure.
I don't particularly like this brand of humor, but the audience did enjoy it. The audience, lots of laughs from the audience. Sure. But you can't do that because you're the LA Times.
They're lying.
You have to lie. You have to lie. So you take a raucous night of fucking big time laughter where... By the way, again, I'm not blowing smoke up my own ass, but I definitely crushed. And what you'll do is you'll have to bring up the people who went up in front of me, and then you have to go, they fared better. Because you can't say it was good, and you can't, like, if it was a shit night of comedy, LA Times, you can't say Trey Stewart and Dustin Ibarra and Erica Rhodes were super funny, because then it's like, well, then maybe it was a funny night.
Right.
But you also can't lump them in with a night of non-laughter because they're in a protected group. So how do you do the carve-out? You go, well, they fared better. That's how you do it.
Fared better than the older, top-billed veterans. Simply because they delivered material that wasn't based in the GHW, Bush, Clinton, GW Bush era.
All right, we got it. Yeah. It was a fucking, they have to call it a bad night, but they got to carve out their protected kids. That's what I like. Also, they're the most predictable entity in the world. The Rolling Stone magazine is the most predictable, and then LA Times. I can tell you exactly what they're going to think of everything before they review anything, which is not what you really want if you're a news organization.
Right. That would be infuriating, too, as a comedian. That is objective, and Schneider, too. He kills. I've seen him on the road. That would be infuriating that somebody, like you said, if it's not your cup of tea, I accept that completely. But to say that there weren't laughs or it wasn't.
Well, you just go, I don't like RFK. We don't like RFK. We don't endorse RFK. But lots of laughs at the event. That's not an endorsement of RFK, but they can't do it.
Right.
That's that they can't say it. It all has to be a lie all the time about everything. That's the beauty. Oh, that's why they're going under. I mean, that's why they laid off 115 reporters. That's why, because they can't stop. What it is they laid off their reporters a month ago, and this thing was 2 weeks ago. They can't stop themselves. And no one ever talks to them. No one ever goes, look, I know, you're going to go there and you're going to write a real shit review about this thing. Maybe that's not a great business model. Maybe you should just go, and if it was enjoyable or people laughed or you thought people laughed, then just put that in the article.
This article in the LA Times was written by Lorraine Ali. Formerly of Rolling Stone.
Oh, perfect. All right. Yes.
Amazing.
Two birds with one Rolling Stone, everybody. All right. We'll take a break. Jamie's going to hang out, and we'll do some news right after this. I got a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink, world's first genetically engineered probiotic. Invented by PhD scientists for rough mornings after drinking. When you drink, alcohol turns into a toxic byproduct in the gut, and that's to blame for your rough next day. Not dehydration. Everyone thinks it's dehydration. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. And let me tell you, I have taken Z-Biotics most recently. Well, I took it before the Super Bowl because I knew I was going to be doing a little celebrating, and the game went on for a long time, and it works. Just remember to make Z-Biotics the first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. It's Z-Biotics, right, Dawson?
Go to zbiotics.com/Carolla to get 15% off your first order when you use Carolla at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Carolla and use the code Carolla at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times. Celebrating 15 years of podcasting, here's a memorable moment from the Adam Carolla Show's Ace Awards archives.
They have decided, permanent Washington, both parties have decided that there's something about Trump that's so threatening to them, they just can't have it. They're putting him on trial in March of next year in the J6 case, which basically consists of trying to send him to prison for the rest of his life for complaining about the last election. That's literally what it is. Again, if this were happening in Moldova, the State Department would issue an all-hands-on-deck order to let the world know this is not a legitimate government. And yet, our government is doing it. It's hard to overstate how bad this is, and I don't know where it's going, but there's a collision that's clearly imminent. And by the way, the president is senile in a way that's impossible to deny. Biden's not running the government. I don't know. I've never been this worried about anything as I am about where this is going.
Now, for some new memorable moments, let's get back to the Adam Carolla Show.
Jamie's hanging with us. We got some news coming.
So there is a Spanish-Dutch artist who is set to marry an AI hologram this summer.
Wow. Yeah, it's on.
Here we go.
It's on.
Yeah, so it's going to be, according to them, a unique ceremony. This AI hologram was trained on data related to her previous romantic partners. But she also had a previous relationship with a mannequin named Pierre. So I guess she's trying to break the pattern and go AI.
Yeah. I don't trust any artists anymore. I would have been fine with artists, hundreds of years ago, like the Dutch masters and stuff like that. When I was young, if someone said artist, you were like, oh, someone can paint a hand that almost looks real, whatever. Now it's always just some fucking nut job. Yoko Ono's an artist. You know what I mean? Everyone's, I did Piss Christ. I put Christ in a tumbler and pissed in it, and I put it in a museum. Like, I don't trust artists anymore. If someone tells me, I'm at a party and someone goes, I'm an artist, I'm going to think you're a nut job unless you can fucking sketch me something right now. Now, see that bowl of fruit over there, dude?
Go.
Yeah, go. And then we can continue this, because otherwise I don't think you're a nut job wants to marry a hologram.
You should have to do that first. Like, there was a lady who did an exhibit where people would just sit across from her and she would just look at them. Did you hear about that? It was like for days. But I'm with you. Like, I think you should have to prove you could paint the fruit, and then you could do this shit. Right?
We need a compulsory. They do it in figure skating. You got to do a figure eight. You got to do a hoop and a loop and a sub. You got to do the compulsory shit, and then go freestyle it. But I need you to draw me that bowl of fucking fruit.
Yeah.
I'm not calling you an artist.
I could see in 10 years you get in a self-driving car and the car's like, just trying to get away from my wife.
That's right.
That's the artist.
Yeah, I know nothing about art, but I saw like some Picasso stuff, like some modern art, and I was like, I feel like Picasso was like, I wish I could get some money for this shit I did when I was like 6.
I'm not a defender of Hunter Biden, but his modern art is every bit as good as any modern art I've ever seen in my life.
Totally.
And it's not a Fox talking point. It's really an indictment for modern artists.
Yeah.
The same way the salmon wasn't an indictment of the great folks from Alaska. It was a tip of the cap to Trader Joe's. I am saying, okay, hold on a second. My sister dated the son of a renowned modern artist. His name was Ed Ed Moses, I think it was. I think it was Ed Moses, not the
There's
Olympic
an artist named
hurdler.
Ed Moses.
Right. He would sell his paintings for hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. He mostly drew big circles.
Wow.
He just like big orbs. You know what I mean? And what I'm saying is Ed Moses, who was a renowned modern artist. This one's actually not as bad as
that's a nice pattern.
Show
Yeah,
me
I like
some
the
more.
colors.
Show me some orbs. I've been to his gallery. Hunter Biden's shit that he draws with a crazy straw is every bit as good as Ed Moses' best work. And that's a fucking junkie who just gets his money from China and only does the art.
It's a rolled up dollar bill.
He sells his art for $500K as a money laundering scam. It's not like someone just said, what's the best way to get this guy money? Well, he can't go to Ukraine and shake down energy companies anymore. But what if you did retarded art and then we just got donors to anonymously give you $500,000 for it? And he's like, all right, I'll be an artist.
Yep.
Hunter Biden shit is every bit as good as any modern artist shit.
How do you sell your first modern art thing?
How do you do the first one?
I can see the next one, but how do you sell the first? Like, who's the first guy that?
Right.
How do you get your first one?
Someone would pay $500,000 for an Ed Moses now because there's a market.
You need a dad like Taylor Swift.
This is right up there with who ate the first lobster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where they went, what? Get away from that fucking thing. Yeah. How do you do the first one?
Yeah. I don't get the deniers of that Biden's old. The people that go like, oh, he's sharp as a tack, or like the Hunter. I don't. I heard I was behind Hunter Biden once at a hot dog stand, and he goes, "How many cocaine straws do I owe you?"
That's how he pays for things.
That's a drug addict.
That's his currency.
And he paints with a cocaine straw too.
Yeah.
He blows bubbles into it. We found cocaine at the White House, and it's not a thing. And the FBI destroyed it, or the Secret Service destroyed it. Like anybody.
When people said
cameras
that,
there, we don't know.
Well, I mean, that's not as ridiculous as the fact that on a laptop, whether it was Hunter's laptop or not, there are pictures of him snorting cocaine off of a hooker's asshole.
All right.
Now, it doesn't matter if where the laptop is from. Well, thank God there's no pictures of Hunter Biden doing coke off a Russian hooker's asshole.
Which I don't have as much a problem with that,
right,
is that it's not a hard enough surface. I just feel like it's a difficult cocaine surface.
It's not effective.
I don't have a problem with it.
No.
Also, like, how do you have? People would go like, it's got to be Hunter's cocaine. And I would go, I don't think so, because it was some left.
That's right.
Do you know? Like, you never doing cocaine and somebody goes like, man, do you got like Tupperware or something? We got way too much.
Leftovers.
Yeah. You got a baggie or something?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. You just do it until it's done.
We got way too much cocaine.
Yeah. No one's ever said that.
Yeah. Well, Rolling Stone just published an article about drugs at the White House.
What?
Yeah. During the Trump administration. So Trump's White House was awash in speed and Xanax during it. It said that, senior administration officials and others who worked at the White House, they were often given speed for things as minor as an energy boost during a particularly long shift.
We're given speed?
Yeah.
What does that mean? They weren't snorting like trucker speed, you know.
I imagine maybe a pill of some sort.
They're given a Xanax or whatever.
Yeah.
They're given whatever you do with ADH. Is that
I don't know. Rolling Stone, there's a quote that says it was like the Wild West. Things are pretty loose. Whatever someone needs, we're gonna fill this.
Listen, I'm all for pharmaceutical interventions, like when they have guys, back in the day who flew like U-2 surveillance planes and stuff like that. And they'd have to be in the air for 18 hours or whatever. They'd dose them up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like if you're like an air traffic controller, take some speed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I always felt like what was weird with drugs is you ever see like they would test an Olympic athlete and they would say like, oh, this snowboarder tested positive for like weed or something. I feel like you should get a higher score because that makes it harder.
Oh, yeah.
I think you should have to help your sport.
It depends what the drug is. Like, I remember there was a championship boxer who won the belt, and tested positive for weed.
Yeah.
And then took the belt away. And I was like, he needs a second belt.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
The weed is not performance enhancing. And the last thing you want to do is box and or train to box when you're high. And if it's helping the person, then strip them of the title.
Yeah, how do you think his opponent feels hearing that?
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like shit.
Yeah, he's actually better than this.
He's stoned?
Yes. All right, sorry.
All right, let me get back to here. So, speaking of cocaine, so Johnny Manziel. Yeah. So, did you see that clip of him talking about him losing all that weight? He was on Club Shay Shay.
No, but I saw his doc.
Oh, yeah, the doc was great on Netflix. Yeah, so here's him just talking about losing all that weight.
I was 210 pounds when I left Cleveland. I was 170 pounds sitting in Vegas that August, that September, October, whatever it was later in that year. How you lose 40 pounds? You're on a strict diet of blow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that he's doing all this media now. And so when the 2024 Heisman Trophy winners announced.
Maybe Oprah's on the booger sugar.
She looks good.
She's not naming what drug it is. So
she's
anything's
doing
on
something.
Anything's on the table or the stripper's ass. So when the 2024 Heisman Trophy winner is announced, don't expect to see Johnny Manziel there, though. Because, at every Heisman Trophy, all past winners join the stage to welcome the next star. But Johnny, he tweeted, after careful thought and consideration, I will be humbly removing myself from the trophy ceremony until Reggie Bush gets his trophy back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he says, it doesn't sit right with my morals and values that he can't be on that stage with us every year. Reggie is the Heisman Trophy. Do the right thing. NCAA, the ball is in your court.
Wow.
Well, this is like performance-enhancing drugs. Like Reggie Bush, a donor, a contributor, an alumni, bought him like a 94 Chevelle and put rims on it or something. And it was like probably $8,000 worth of car, and they dropped it off at his house. And now he doesn't get the Heisman. But how did that help him on the field? When he took the punt return to the house, or 240 all-purpose yards against Arizona State. What the fucking Chevelle was at his dad's house in the driveway.
Yeah.
I think somebody leased him a house, or his dad a house, or something.
Him and his family received gifts while he was playing for the Trojans.
But fine. How did it help? You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't like it.
He still earned it.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Like, how did it help?
Yeah, so Manziel, even in the Netflix documentary, he said he admitted that he made money, but after he won the Heisman. So he's saying the only difference between my story and Reggie's is that my illegal activities didn't start until after my Heisman.
And by the way, whatever they're doing now, they're getting paid. I mean, Bronny James is getting paid.
Right.
So college students, athletes are getting paid now. So
get Reggie in there. Get Johnny and Reggie back in the ceremony.
Give OJ's Heisman back as long as killing those people did not help.
He still did all that. He still earned it.
He's grandfathered in with the Heisman. I mean, that was far before the glove or anything. Yeah, give everyone their Heisman. Give me one while we're talking about it. Just you know what?
Give Oprah one.
Forget about all these fakakta honorary doctorates. Bill Cosby's going to get an honorary. Jon Stewart's going to get an honorary. How about an honorary Heisman? I like football. I'm prominent.
I would like to start this campaign. Let's get out of an honorary Heisman.
Or Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? Like, who wants another fucking... Bill Cosby had like 186 doctorate. He was probably all in the trunk of his car.
Willy-nilly.
Yeah.
What is that? What is the...
How does that even work, the honorary part?
What if I got one? What if I went to school for 18 years and then they just give one to you? Am I not angry?
It's a weird thing to be like, if someone wants to give me a nickel-plated revolver or something, I'll go, oh, thanks. But if it's just, if you made me a document that said, Adam Carolla fucked Gina Lola Brigida in 1967, I'd go, I wish I did, but that I didn't do it. Yeah, so what are we talking about here? You know what it's like? Remember, if you had a friend whose parents had any kind of money at all when you were a kid, they had that stupid picture of them, or like a Wheaties box with a picture of their kid on it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like athlete of the year. But it's a 9-year-old and he's wearing his Pop Warner football jersey. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean any. So what's the honorary doctorate mean?
I don't know, but I mean, if anybody here, if anybody listening to the sound of my voice can give Adam Carolla an honorary doctorate from their institution, we'll happily accept.
I have plaques for like honorary this and honorary that on the wall. There may be a day. There may be an Adam Carolla day in Vegas. I don't know. I've never looked at any of it twice because it didn't. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it can't help.
I didn't earn.
I did a job interview, right? I got a degree. It's honorary. That can't help you.
Yeah.
Land the job?
No, it's right.
You just got it for nothing.
All it says is that you've risen to a level of prominence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that we would give you a meaningless piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, you didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything, but you're so important in the other shit you do.
Yeah.
That we're giving you this shit.
Like if your surgeon had an honorary degree, you go, I don't want that guy.
I don't want that guy.
No,
that's right.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Maybe that's why you woke up in the middle of the colonoscopy. Maybe that wasn't a real degree in that guy's
certificate
office.
a little closer.
All right. Our guests are here, right? Yeah? For the second show?
Yes.
All right. There's just two of them, so I just want to make sure they're both here. Jamie, let me give you a plug here, my friend. Laugh Factory coming up. Covina. That's Covina, California Laugh Factory. And then Reno, another Laugh Factory.
Yeah.
Right? That's
yeah.
Covina's March 7th, and then Reno is going to be March 14th through the 16th. Jamie Lissow, Lissow.
Yep, that is correct. And you pronounced it correctly. Thank you. Oh, yeah, and I got a podcast.
Afraid to Ask.
Afraid to Ask with his Dr. Galpal.
Yeah, with my Dr. Galpal, we do some medical questions, and I find spaces for dick jokes.
All right, we're going to talk about one of the best bands in the world, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, from someone who was in it. Someone's made a great doc about it. Well, always one of my favorites, and we'll do that right after this. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Well, they're in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly offers friendly, helpful service and parts and knowledge you need to do all your own maintenance and repairs. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in store or online, so you never have to worry. If you're in a jam, they'll help you out. When you're a do-it-yourselfer and need a specialty tool to finish the job, well, stop by O'Reilly and ask for one of their loaner tool programs, because there's a lot of real special tools when it comes to doing certain jobs on cars. Simply pay a refundable deposit and borrow the right tool, then get the deposit back when it's returned, so it's free. They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. Plus, they can test your battery for free in or out of the car, so you don't have to pop it out. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto, and you can find what you need in the store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam. My sheet here.
It's COLO and it's Colomby.
Colomby. All right. There's a UNO version of it on my sheet. But either way, great doc. I've always been a huge fan of Blood, Sweat, and Tears because my dad played the trumpet all through my life, and always had appreciation for the horns. And I love horn-driven anything. It's like I don't know. It's like salsa. It just makes everything better when it gets combined with eggs or burritos or whatever.
But salsa music?
No,
salsa.
Just salsa.
Okay, gotcha.
Not the salsa music. But that's a good point. I mean, you keep me honest. So always love Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I think one of the first CDs I ever bought, when CDs were $16 when they came out. I was making $9 an hour. It was an expensive thing. Best of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. That's the very first CD I bought. And then I was always a fan of the band, but I never really knew this chapter, the whole Eastern Bloc. And And also shades of this whole canceling thing that we're getting into now. It's been around for a little while.
It was interesting, Adam. I was a big fan of the band as a teenager and into college and all of that. But I always had wondered, they were so popular, beat the Beatles out for a Grammy Award.
Abbey Road.
Yeah, they were so famous, and then suddenly they weren't. What happened? So Bobby had seen a film I'd made a few years before about John Coltrane, and he called me up one day and he said, I want to take you to lunch, I want to tell you a story. And we were just sort of schmoozing before lunch, and I said, what the hell happened to Blood, Sweat, and Tears? Here you were. And he said, that's the story I'm going to tell you, and that's the story we tell in the film.
Yeah, the doc is called What the Hell Happened to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. It's a very layered doc. It does a very nice thing, which is it starts with the story of them on the road and going to all the Eastern Bloc nations and so on and so forth, and then it stops and gets back to the origins of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which is a smart way to craft a doc so you can see how it all came together. And yeah, I think most people just don't have the bandwidth to kind of look into everything all the time like we should, which is sad, but it would be wildly distracting. But I was always, there are bands that had great success and then you didn't hear from them again, but it was usually based on their talent. Like they got a little flash in the panty and they got hot or whatever, but they didn't have the chops to endure, you know what I mean? But Blood, Sweat, and Tears was not that band. It was just laden with talent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
Well, what's interesting,
yeah.
we had we were at dinner one night on the west side of L.A., and my dermatologist was a couple of tables over, and I went over to say hi, and he was there with a young couple, probably early 30s. And he says, my patient John, he's a great documentary filmmaker, what are you working on? Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I'm sure you've seen this where you mentioned something and there's a total blank look in the eyes. They had no idea, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, what was I talking about? But I mentioned the songs, Spinning Wheel and When I Die You May Be Sorry. And, I know that song. I know that song. So the songs have endured, even though the band, because of the story we tell, has not endured in the same way.
I love Lucretia McEvil, and I love Go Down Gambling. I got a little off. I usually, with any band, I go, what's their biggest hit? And then I go, what's the B-side of their biggest hit? And I'm usually more interested. And you're playing the drums.
No, yeah, right, I founded the band.
Right.
This was a concept I had because I had two older brothers, much older, like 16 and 17 years older than me. One of them was a trumpet player like your dad. Good improviser, self-taught. His best friend was a guy named Miles Davis.
Wow.
My other brother was a high school teacher, loved jazz also, and he decides, or he's asked to, manage Thelonious Monk for 14 years.
Wow.
So I'm growing up in this household with Bach and Beethoven in my living room, basically, for me.
Right.
So the only music I heard was jazz and bebop and classical, some Prokofiev and stuff. I didn't hear pop music. And then when I finally got, because I guess I can say this, you ain't getting laid if you're playing jazz.
No.
So I figured, okay, if I'm going to meet girls, I better play pop music and and stuff. Okay, so then I start hanging out in the West Village, and I meet girls, and I meet lesser musicians than the jazz musicians that I'm used to playing with, who are these young, phenomenal players.
Right.
But there were no drummers, so I was like, this is pretty good because the drummers were always the worst guitar player in the folk band, or the kid whose father had the most money to have a garage and to buy a drum set. But I actually could play a little bit because you don't play jazz casually. Either you play it or you don't. So I just wanted to put a band together that could capture both of the best elements of both of the music, to sing in tune, to tell stories, and to have a richer harmonic content than most of pop music had at the time, and have some of my jazz playing, horn playing friends be in the band. I never imagined in a billion years this thing could make a nickel. It was just, let's try this and, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And then Al Cooper, who was a mover shaker who really knew the business inside out, asked me to play with him on something. I was friends with a guy who he hated, who was in a band that he was in before. And he said, hey, would you play with me? Because I'm leaving the country. I want to be a producer in England. I said, okay. And we do like a weekend at a club. And I invite the guy that he hated, Steve Katz, the guitar player, who's my friend. I said, come on, let him play with it. Don't hold grudges. It's stupid. He said, all right. So we do the gig, and no one shows up. I mean, no one cares about him. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think that Paul Simon was one of the people he asked to play on the bill with us. We still didn't get anyone in the club. Anyway, so we do the gig, and I'm playing with Odetta at this time, who is a folk singer, great, actually, like a gospel folk. And I'm with her, and I get this idea, and I call Steve up, who's in New York, and I said, can you ask Al if we could do some of the songs that he played, on the weekend? Because I like some of those tunes, they're cool. And the band I'm thinking of, that would work for us. He said, I'll ask him, and I'll never forget this moment. I'm sitting there, phone rings a day later, he says, oh, I spoke to Al, he's in. He said, absolutely, you can have the songs. I said, great, I'm ready to hang up. He goes, no, wait, he wants to be in the band. I went, I thought he's leaving. No. He wants to be in the band. He wants to be the band leader. Oh, and the name is Blood Sweat. I go, whoa, what are you talking about? And I'm writing, I'll never forget. I go, Blood Sweat? What are you, that's Churchill. What are you dealing with here? He goes, no, he wants to be, he's all energetic and he loves the idea. And I went, okay, but I had some trepidations because I didn't think he was a great singer.
He didn't have the chops.
He didn't have the chops. And he played organ, but not on the level of the people I'm used to having played with.
Yeah.
So we did it for a year.
Yeah.
And, it was his band, and he picked the songs. There was a song on the first album that none of us are even on. It's just him and the string quartet. I'm thinking, this is really getting weird.
That was the first album of Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Yeah, which sold 40,000 units, and it was a failure.
Yeah. And then David Clayton Thomas.
Well, we had heard him in a club in New York City. If you are in New York City and have never had a venereal disease, you go there because that's your best opportunity to get something. And you go to this club, Steve Paul's Scene it was called, and everyone used to jam there and play there. And I'm with Steve and we're talking, and there's a guy on stage, has the worst stage presence you've ever seen, his hands on the guitar. Hey, how you doing? But over our heads was a speaker, and I'm listening to Ray Charles and Bobby Bluebland. I go, that's coming out of that guy? Holy shit, this guy can sing.
Yeah.
Well, and then we forget about it. Al Cooper said, I say to Al, like we have a meeting, Al, we got to get a singer.
Right.
Because it's me or no one. I went, let's vote. And they voted him out. And he was gone. And now we're looking for a singer. And if you were available, you should have called because you can obviously sing. But
only with him.
Oh, well, who knows? Anyway, so we sort of remembered him. I said, yeah, the guy's Canadian. Let's see if we can get the guy. And he came to a rehearsal. And in the movie, it shows exactly what happened. Is I asked all these singers who were auditioning at the time just to learn a couple tunes. And he goes in and learns a song of Al's called I Love You More Than You'll Ever Know. It's a great song. And he starts to sing, If I Ever Leave. And I just said, okay, you got the gig.
Done.
Yeah, I mean, pipes,
you got to be
you can't argue.
And because we needed that strength with the horn section.
Yes.
We needed that. You can't have like a wimpy thing.
So the story's, interesting story. So he's Canadian. And by the way, then the second album comes out and it's taking over the charts in the world and Grammys and
nothing had sold like that album up until that point. That was it. I mean, Clive Davis, who I spoke to about a week and a half ago, we were talking about different things. He said, no, that outsold everything before it.
Yeah,
Nothing
it was everywhere. Yeah. Had so many hits on it, and was also so new that
it had everything.
It had everything.
And also look at its potential demographic is an 80-year-old man, like a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
black, white. We were on the R&B charts with God Bless the Child. It was soaring up the charts until someone said, they're white. And then they pulled the plug. But that's what was going on.
Well, and so the State Department, and the Cold War, and going behind the Iron Curtain and doing a tour and all that.
Communist countries on our side.
But it also turns out that they're going to take David Clayton Thomas' green card away, and they're going to take him out of the band and move him back to Canada.
Because we spoke against the war. We were like anyone our age. Obvious that Nixon was a crook. Obvious the war was insane.
Kent State and everything else.
Yeah, it was all going on.
Yeah, right. And so in order to keep your lead singer, who is lightning in a bottle, in the band and in the United States, the band agrees to do this tour of these iron bloc states and abroad. So let's pick it up from there.
Sure. Blood, Sweat, and Tears was the first American rock band to perform behind the Iron Curtain in communist countries. And the idea was the State Department, you sort of mentioned it, that it wanted to make friends and say, well, if you like this about America, what else might you like? So they did a lot of cultural presentations, but up to this point, it was mostly classical musicians or jazz musicians or dancers. This was the first rock band. And so here's the hottest rock band going. There's no chance the State Department would have had this unless there was this quid pro quo going on. Right. It really was a blackmail situation, where it's like, you want to keep your singer? Do this tour for us. We'll make sure the immigration problems for your singer go away. And that's what happened.
Yeah, and all the trials and the tribulations, you guys should watch the movie and understand, of the craziness of that time. And still going on today in many different ways. But to me, the more interesting part of the story even is when you guys got back and how guys like Abby Hoffman and others. And the reason that struck a chord in me is, I thought Abby Hoffman was a colossal douchebag. But also, I was like, oh, yeah, we just did this with COVID. Like, with the same asshole agitators trying to get everyone canceled. And people, listened to them. And we've not learned a goddamn thing in 50-some-odd years.
And the Russians invading.
Right.
Here we are.
Here we are 50 years
later.
50 years plus, and it's the same story. And then you get into this bizarre realm where you're going, wait a minute, and I have to do it myself. I'm not conservative. I'm an atheist who says marry whoever you want and smoke as much pot as you like. That's me. Yeah. Why am I getting lumped into this anti-vaxxer group or whatever the fuck it is? Just getting lumped in with this stuff, and you go, you were against Nixon and the Vietnam War, and you're doing benefits for the ACLU and Kent State to raise money to defend these people, and now you're getting lumped in with the Nixon administration.
We had a feeling this could happen, but we didn't realize the weight of it. When we came back and John found the tape in my, he's a detective. Documentary filmmakers, John in particular. If you're ever having a problem with your wife or anything, you suspect she's cheating, just hire John.
Get a documentary crew in there.
Absolutely, they'll find out shit you never imagined. He's in my house, and he goes, what's that tape? What's this? I go, I don't know. He's on a ladder. He's looking up. What's this tape? I said, I have no idea. It's the audio tape, and I had no idea what it was, of the press conference when we came back from Eastern Europe.
Right, at LAX.
Yeah, but there was an audio tape,
right,
and he had stills. So he's able to tell that story, and we were bombarded with questions that you could tell, like the pig-faced singer replied, wait a minute. I don't think he's a fan.
Except the thing that makes it a little
different. That's the LA Times back then. and Rolling Stone did a hit.
Oh,
they were doing what they've been doing for a long time.
But the difference was, today you either get it from the left or from the right. What made this situation unique is Blood, Sweat, and Tears got it from both sides.
Both,
yeah.
The left wing came after him and the right wing came after him. And it was this squeeze play that made things really uncomfortable.
Yes, because you can... If one side comes after you, then you just become a hero to the other side, and that'll fill any stadium you decide to do a show at. You don't need the whole country, and you don't even need half the country. But if you got half, your touring dates will be sold out for the rest of eternity. But both sides. and then a kind of a weird smear job, but then what happened after that? Because the doc sort of stopped at that point.
Well, the band at that the any momentum we would have had, and the third album, which I love the third album, it had Lucretia. The fourth had Go Down Gambling. That's the fourth album.
I want to hear a little.
And that's actually one of my favorite cuts we ever did. And the reason,
because I'm a musical genius, I fucking understand.
I think that's
everything.
the reason. Yeah. But also, as a musician, it's one of the only songs that we've done that was arranged without stopping. Everything we did, break. This one's and it was David Clayton Thomas playing guitar. It's the same beat.
David Clayton Thomas was playing guitar in the recording.
It's his song.
That's his song.
It's all him.
He seems
that voice, Al's voice, was never going to get on AM radio.
So that was sung by Cats, right? The guitar.
Yeah, he did it sometimes in winter.
Yes, right. But yeah, if you had David Clayton Thomas, yeah.
So I guess my question is, and I know the answer, but the same songs that were radio hits done with Al would not have been radio hits.
There are certain singers whose voices, as great as they are, and certainly as songwriters, as amazing as they are, wouldn't make it on AM radio. Joni Mitchell, Laura Nyro. I'll give you a list of people who could write amazing material, but their voices didn't have an AM quality to it. Certain frequencies just didn't carry. So there you have it.
So to go to your first question, though, what happened was this horrible cancel culture situation in which the band found themselves, it exacerbated the conflicts between the band members. And within 18 months, 3 of them left, then another 3 left, and then Bobby was the only original member left carrying on. Bands have a moment. TV shows have a moment. Movies have a moment where everything is working right for them. The reviews are great. Podcasts will come after them. Everything is going right. And one little thing can throw that moment off. But this was a big thing that affected Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And suddenly their moment was over. And it's why you didn't hear about them in the 80s.
We also played Las Vegas.
Yeah.
They came to us and said, do you want to play? Of course, our reaction is, are you nuts? Right. I thought about it.
Before rock bands played Las Vegas.
No, there were never a rock band. And I thought, or jazz bands, actually. It was all, Stephen Eady and Frank.
You lose your street cred in Vegas.
Right. And I know that. And I knew that. But I also knew that our schedule was such that the gig we had after Vegas was the Fillmore East. So we weren't abandoning our fan base at all. It was an opportunity. I thought, and we all sat around and said, what do you think about this? And first of all, are we going to have fun? Oh, my God, are we going to have fun? But beyond that, we'll open the door. If this is successful, all these venues will open the door to some other types of music. We should try it. And we were very successful. It opened the door. And now no one is yelling at anyone who does residencies there.
No.
U2 is not taking shit because they're playing Vegas.
You guys should be getting a cut from the Sphere right now.
Listen, all the stuff they said was something. It's always my sort of parsley by the side of the plate. For 50 years, you had to put a sprig of parsley next to the eggs at every diner. And then someone would go, what is the parsley for? And I go, it's got to be there. Breath. And then you go, why? And you go, people like it. You go, no, I've never seen anyone ask for it or eat it. Believe you me, we need the parsley. And it's 50 years of parsley, and one day there's no parsley, and no one says shit, and everyone just moves on. And that's how most every societal rules. You can't play this. You can't do that. You can't go over there. TV to do that too. You can't do the Tonight Show and then do Letterman. You can't do both. You got to pick one. You do Letterman or you do the thing. You do this or you do that. And then you go, so what? What if we just did both? And they go, well, that's never going to. And then you do it, and then it's like nobody cares. That's right. That's almost every showbiz rule.
You nailed it.
This is a rule, except for it's not a rule because somebody breaks it and then no one gives a shit.
But it's not a rule. It's an assumption.
Right.
That
and
gets broken
you guys
immediately.
at Woods, first band to sign up for Woodstock.
One of the first. They came to us. I knew Mike Lang, and I had worked with what's his name?
Artie Kornfeld.
Artie Kornfeld. I worked with him. He was producing the Cow Stills once, and I remember being in a studio. He asked me to come in and play on the record, and I'm going, "What am I doing here?" But and he's a very nice guy. And they came to us, Because if we decide as a group to be promoters, and we found an amazing space, a huge venue, and we start with Springsteen and U2 and McCartney and say, we're in, we're probably going to do well. I mean, there are going to be people there. We were that. We were a combination of those groups. So they came to us right away and said, would you do it? And to us, it was another gig. It was never, oh my God, it's an event. We had no idea. It was just crowded, and there was a lot of pot smoking, and it was fun. Late at night, and then we went home right away. We drove in and drove home.
Where did you go? What day? Where in the set? You know, who was before you? Who was after you?
We were last night, we were supposed to close. Mm-hmm. It was the Sunday night. It had already rained like crazy. Mm-hmm. And the story, if you have time, I'll tell it. I was standing, because it rained so much. I'm standing on planks of wood, and there are cops lining like the backstage area, and people are all coming up to me and say, "Hey man, you want some pot?" And I wasn't a big pot smoker, and I went, "No, I'm cool." And I'm looking at the police, going, "Oh my God, what?" And they're looking palms up, like, "It's cool, you know, right. you can do whatever you need to do, because we're not going to arrest 400,000 people."
Right.
And just because I could, when in Rome, I said, "You know what? Yeah." And I'm puffing, I'm not doing that. I'm just puffing away at the thing. I'm nervous. I'm waiting. They're an hour and a half late, and I'm standing on this plank of wood, and they keep giving me these joints. I'm going, "No, it's okay. Okay, fine." I look at the cop. Go ahead. Now it's time to go on. And our road manager, this is what I see. And he's coming towards me, and he just goes, "You're on." And I went, something is wrong with me. And I sit behind the drums, and I just tap the snare. It goes, and then, and I go, I'm thinking, I'm really good. I'm really good at this. And it was a gig, and we went home. We had no inkling other than it was really crowded, and they had, knocked over the fences.
But they didn't film your set.
There was a reason for that, because we were the headliners, as was Janis Joplin, who you also don't see in the movie.
Right.
As was the
band, I think.
The band, because Albert Grossman was managing those acts. He was standing next to our kind of a newbie manager who idolized Albert Grossman, who was a brilliant manager. And they went to him and said, we're going to film this, and it's going to be a movie. And Albert just said, "What?" Wait. My artist is going to star in your movie. What are you paying? Half of their fee. In her case, it was like $3,000. In our case, it was going to be $7,500.
In Janis Joplin's case.
Yeah.
All right. And you guys were paid what?
We were paid top, other than Hendrix, who played twice. So he got $18,000. We got $15,000. We just played once. And that was so that was really the top price at that time. And here's $7,500 to star in a movie.
Right.
And our manager looked at Albert Grossman. He said, "We ain't doing this." And he said, "I'm not doing that." And probably if they asked me at the time, I would have said, "No, of course not."
Right.
In retrospect, of course, it would have been the greatest thing to be in that movie, but we weren't.
What we discovered is they did film half the set. And we found the footage buried. Bobby talks about the detective job. That's one of the things about my job I love is the detective
work. Oh, they filmed
work.
the full half the set.
We found the set buried in the vault at Warner Brothers.
Wow.
And there was a new HD transfer done. And so in our film, you see them doing this old Motown song called More and More. And it's fantastic. They are a killer band on stage. No one had ever seen that footage before.
It really was a great band. I mean, I'm bragging.
No,
but from my point of view, because I knew every time you're going, it's like going to the track knowing who's going to win every single race.
Yeah.
Like you sit down and you look at the audience, and I'm thinking, oh, wait till you hear this. And we start playing More and More, like da-da-da-da, and the audience is like, holy shit. Because bands never sounded as good live back then, because there was no lip syncing, no pre-records.
Right.
You'd have to have the goods.
Yeah, so, and look, that's why I have no time for bands that I don't consider talented. Everyone tries to talk me into everything all the time. You know, they love the Beastie Boys. I'm like, hacks. What are we talking about? They don't play anything. They don't do anything. I was, oh, you gotta love. They tell me half the people that get inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now suck. Joan Jett sucks. She's in there because she's a lesbian. There's no other possible way. I love rock and roll. It's like a nursery rhyme. It's like it's just for dumb people.
But go down the list. No, but just go down the entire list and ask yourself, what effect have they had on music? What happened? What did they do to be in a Hall of Fame because they have accomplished something?
Where it's now.
And right now, to me, it's a badge of honor not to be in there.
Well, I don't think Emerson, Lake, and Palmer's in there.
I think they probably are.
Are they?
Yeah.
They ACLP in there? Because
he's going to check.
I don't know why, but it kept bothering me that as I was watching David Clayton Thomas from back in the day, I was like, oh, he looks exactly like Shane Gillis, the comedian. And I told, are they in?
ELP not.
Not in. So
there you go.
Joined.
There's another not.
You've got another band where people can play.
You know why? Because it went cool.
Yeah.
And Jan Wenner and John Landau just no, they're not cool. Now they're no longer a part of it. But now we have to. Now it's we have to have more women. We have to have more.
Yes, it ruins everything.
It just
ruins everything.
You talk about enduring though, and you talk about how the music could change something. One of the things we wanted to do in the film was to find young people who had been at those concerts behind the Iron Curtain.
You did.
And have them talk about it. So thank goodness for social media in those countries. We hired a researcher in Yugoslavia, Romania, and Poland. They found these guys who were now in their 70s.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, I went to a concert at the Forum last weekend. 50-some years later, these concerts still had incredible significance for these people, not only because the music blew them away, but what it represented in terms of freedom and the United States. And to find, it was one thing if Bobby and the band guys say, the concerts went over well, but to see and hear those guys say it made a big difference.
It's a real movie, and I've made a few docs, and I know, weak ones from strong ones. And then there's the ones that are like, they have a good subject and everything. They're just not that well crafted. Yeah. There's a certain skill to the crafting part. This is a really good doc.
I learned stuff.
Yes.
Watching that. So I didn't even know that happened.
I want to see a picture of David Clayton Thomas and Shane Gillis and see if they look like the same.
Ooh. They do.
Which one's which?
Wow.
Not that bad.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice job, Byron.
Wow, that is good job.
David looks really pleasant in that picture.
Hey, Bobby, if I could, one quick question about your. They hated you guys in Sarajevo, and then you went to Romania.
Can I have to explain something?
Okay.
In the movie, yes, the audience, it was hysterical. I mean, because like we end the song, ba-ba-ba-da, yeah, wham, like the end of Laughing. What's going on? The audio it was like a weird venue. The audio, we didn't have a sound check, was so all they heard was this awful sound. Because there's no way, even if they were told you get an extra 5 zlotys if you hate the band, we've never had that happen to us ever. Okay. And I know someone finally just was like, the sound was unbearably just loud. You couldn't make anything out. It was just this drone.
Right. Okay.
And they hated it.
Then you got to Romania. You played a couple of shows. The first one was too good.
It starts in Romania. And that's Sarajevo.
Okay. So the second show that you did in Romania, where they did not allow you to film, but you had still pictures telling the story. I looked at these pictures of that second show. And aside from the pictures of David, who's always, he's singing, so his pictures are going to look like he's singing and in emotion, every single other band member looked terrified. Were you really?
I wasn't, because I think I was an idiot. That's the only explanation I have.
With the other guys, did you talk about that? Because some of these pictures, you guys look terrified.
This band was not a band that would say, let's get a position on Nixon. Let's have a position. We're just musos, man. We're just a bunch of musicians trying to figure out what's the best way we can do this. How do we play this? How can we make the song better? That was our meetings. Our concern was always that. When we went to Romania, we knew the second we landed, something's real different about this job. And it was horrifying. Every member of the band had his own experience, which is what John, found, and I'm learning about all these things that happened that I was not aware of because I was in my world. But there was a kid, a draftsman, a 27-year-old draftsman. I'll never forget this. And the kid kind of signals me like he'd like to talk to me. And I'm going, how you doing? And he's like real nervous to talk to me. Apparently, in Romania, if you talk to an American, you have to go to the authorities and tell them, an American spoke to me. Because if you don't turn them in, if you don't say it, your mother probably will turn you in. Right. This was the level of paranoia, and the guy would never talk to. He said, no, wait. So finally we go to a zoo in the country, and we're in the woods, and he's looking around for and he finally opens up, can you get me photographs of what the draftsmen use in America? I guess just that, just what they have. And I went, yeah, I'll do my best. I'll get it to you. Thank you. He was afraid to ask that question.
Wow. Yeah, and part of the theme is and again, going back, because it's going on now. We sit around and we go, do you know the oppression and the racism and the xenophobia and women's rights and stuff? It's like, travel around the world and see how they're treating the ladies.
I got a call from the New York Post after that press conference. We got home from a woman. I used to read the Post because the sports were great. And it came out in the afternoon, and you could read it without folding it 19 times. It was a great paper. So I got the Post. And anyway, I was getting the Post all the time, and then I get a call from a woman saying, I write for the Post. I'd like to speak to you about the trip that you just went. And I just went through everything. It's all the negativity. And I said, I'll tell you what. Do you have any travel budget? She said, what do you mean? I said, do you know how cheap it is to go over there? It's nothing. Go over there. Go to these countries. Spend a couple of days. Come back. Let's sit down and talk. I would love to have that conversation after you see what I saw. She goes, great. Next day, it's a complete article she writes with quotes that I never gave her. It's a complete article. I'm reading this going, this is the woman I never spoke to.
It's good to know nothing is new.
Yeah, right.
That I've learned. All right, gentlemen, it's a really great doc. What the hell happened to Blood, Sweat, and Tears? And you should watch the doc, and it's available for rent, or you can own it on cable, satellite, digital platforms. But go educate yourself on the band, because that is high quality music and just stuff you'd never heard before. Not really even since, because you can't do David, the musicianship is real high and you can't do David Clayton Thomas's voice. So there really is one.
And they were unique arrangements.
Yes, the arrangements.
Because back then, horns would just play unison. They'd all da-da-da-da-da. They'd all play the same notes.
Yeah.
But our guys, we had two arrangers, and really loved the idea of, and that was the rule we had: no limit. Don't worry about it. Just whatever you have in your head.
Yeah, the horns are always great, and if you want to listen to. I'm a friendly stranger in the black sedan with hoppins on a
vehicle. That's not us.
Ides of March. I know. But what I'm saying is the stuff's sort of linear. I mean, as good as the horns are in, let's say, Ides of March, they move along in a certain direction. And then Motown would be that way and stuff like that. It was great, but it wasn't different. It wasn't what this was.
They played like rhythm guitar.
Right, right.
That was the feel of all the horn sections were really like rhythm guitar parts.
Mm-hmm.
We came in at completely different. We had two arrangers. They were both horn players.
Right.
So they really focused on different harmony, different approaches, classical music, jazz, everything. Again, there was no limit because we never thought we'd have a hit.
Right. There's a freedom in that.
Yeah.
All right. So please avail yourself of some Blood, Sweat, and Tears and the doc, which is really well put together as well. Bobby, John, thank you guys for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And is David Clayton Thomas a douche?
I'm never going to say anything. Ever going to say anything like that. That's a horrible thing to even bring up.
You made a face. You made a
I
face.
certainly would never say anything bad about a former bandmate.
Oh, God.
But to David's defense, I will say the day that I interviewed him, we had a big problem getting into Canada because it was during COVID, and they wouldn't let Americans in or Canadians out.
That's the way they do.
But there was a period of about 3 weeks where the border was open, and so we flew in. He was a gentleman. And what you see on the screen is a guy that's being very candid and open about his experience and sharing some feelings looking back that I don't believe he had ever shared before. Yeah. And so we got what I felt was a very honest interview with him.
It seemed affable.
I thought he was terrific in the movie. I know he was. He was absolutely terrific.
Yeah. All right. I thank Tucker and Jamie and John and Bobby and Chris. And I'll be at Kimmel's Comedy Club in Vegas doing 2 shows tomorrow. So come on out and say hi. Until next time, it's Adam Carolla saying, Mahala.